Alright, welcome back to Shooting It Straight. We're looking at MIM pistol parts, MIM pistol parts, and whether or not you should be concerned about that. Now, what does MIM, M-I-M, what does that mean exactly? And what parts of my gun are MIM parts? And should I be concerned about it? Well, MIM is metal injection molding. It's a manufacturing process by which powdered metal is turned into a solid metal part. Now, your pistol contains several of these components, as do nearly all pistols. But they're small components, such as maybe your locking block, your sights, possibly, maybe your extractor, your slide stop, things like that. Those are most likely MIM components, depending on the manufacturer. For example, my old Springfield Armory XD45 here, I can tell you now that the takedown lever is MIM, the slide release is MIM, the locking block is MIM, the sights are MIM, and this firing pin safety is MIM. And even on this model, because this is an old one, the trigger itself is MIM. Now, I understand that they're now making them with polymer triggers instead of the metal or steel triggers like this one. They've stopped making these. But I may be wrong though, but that's what I've heard. But here's the thing. Should you worry? Well, some folks still do worry about that. You know, they have a mistrust issue with anything other than solid machined steel. And they view MIM parts as being inferior components. Now, that may have been a legitimate concern many years ago, but realistically, that's not a concern anymore. It's been a long time since that's been a concern. The process of using particular MIM components in firearms has been in place now for more than 25 years. And, giant improvements have been made in the MIM industry since then. I'll give you a breakdown of how often and common MIM parts are, not just in firearms. But here's an example. Here's a rundown for you. 42% of all MIM components and parts, 42% of the market is for firearms manufacturers. 26% of the market is for medical uses. 12% is for general industrial use, and the remainder of the market is divided up between dental, electronics, automotive, and defense aerospace use. So it's wide, it's out there, it's ubiquitous, it's everywhere. Now let's take a closer look at how MIM parts are actually manufactured, and then you can come to your own conclusions regarding the MIM parts in your pistol. Now, metal injection molding was developed in the 1980s as an improvement over conventional forms of metal casting. Okay. It starts with powdered steel, usually stainless steel or carbon steel, but sometimes titanium. Now, this powdered metal is mixed with a thermoplastic or a wax binder, which forms a sort of slurry when heated. All right, now this slurry is injected into a heated precision mold, and it will form what is called a green part. Green being new, Now, that green part is 20% larger than what the final finished part will be. But in that green condition, it's still in its embryonic stage, and so it will snap under finger pressure at that point. But Once cooled, that part is placed into a sintering furnace with dry hydrogen gas and then heated to a temperature of some 2300 degrees, or just below the melting point of the particular metal used in it. In this process, the binder will vaporize and the powdered steel will fuse together. It'll bond together, and the part itself will shrink by 20% to its final and correct dimension. Now, the density of the part is now, these days, routinely at 98 to 99%. But that's not all. Reinforced hardening procedures were discovered and have been in place for a while. Updated sinter furnaces can apply accelerated cooling rates in the cooling zone, and material grades have been developed that can transform martensitic microstructures at those cooling rates. That's a big deal. The process, together with a subsequent tempering treatment, is known as sintering hardening. It's in the sintering process, but it's hardening at the same time. And that greatly enhances the strength of the MIM part, even more so. With these procedures, MIM parts can possess the same strength as cast steel. Now, the MIM process is best suited for components that are less than 30 grams in weight and less than 100 millimeters in length. I think 100 millimeters is right around 4 inches? Is that right? I suck at math, but anyway. The benefit of using MIM components is simply cost advantage. Okay, the MIM process eliminates some of the steps that are necessary in machining steel parts. Less fitting is required as well. Now that holds down the manufacturing cost, which is why you paid $650 for your pistol instead of $1,000. Now, Smith & Wesson began using MIM triggers and hammers in their revolvers back in the mid-1990s, and I'll bet nobody ever noticed it. Smith & Wesson's project manager, Herb Beelan, said that they set up a specific testing and evaluation trial to ensure that any MIM part would be at least as durable as any factory part, if not superior, before they would even consider using a MIM part in their guns. Well, Herb said that they used their then prototype. Remember, we're talking in the mid-90s here. At that time, they had a prototype model 340 and 360 Magnum revolvers. Both of those were outfitted with MIM triggers and hammers. Now, employees of the testing department fired these pistols frequently for several months. Eventually, the employees came to a point of being unable to determine which pistols had the MIM components between those that did not have the MIM components. The subsequent examination of the components after the trials revealed no perceptible changes to the dimensions of the MIM parts. So, satisfied that they could use the parts in their pistols while still offering their lifetime warranty, convinced Smith & Wesson to begin installing MIM parts on their revolvers by 1996. And, it's a similar story with the king of combat pistols, Wilson's Combat, Bill Wilson. Now, they use MIM parts in building those highly tuned custom pistols while also continuing their lifetime warranty. And I'm sure you're familiar with their warranties on there. In fact, Wilson said properly manufactured MIM parts are usually less prone to wear and breakage than are many of the other factory parts. Now, of course, you're free to form your own opinion as to the uses of MIM parts in pistols and if they're worth it or not, or it's something you should be afraid of. But based on my experience and the information presented, I can say that I've got no concerns with MIM parts at all. nearly every pistol has at least some MIM components, except I think Dan Wesson, which is probably why I can't afford a Dan Wesson pistol, as great as they are. But anyway, there you have it, boys. Are the MIM parts as strong as forged steel? No, but they don't need to be, since these parts are not under stress, tension, compression, or torsional actions. Modern MIM components are fine. There's no need for concern. So if you found this video helpful, then hit the like button and let me know it. Thanks for watching. Catch me, Antonius, on the next Shooting It Straight. Ciao.